So as you know, this is the Vida panel, and with us today we have, I'm switching technology, two of the actors from Vida. First, we have the fabulous Anzoategui, who is a non-binary Latinx, Chicanx actor, playwright, activist, with the gender pronoun they, them, theirs, one of the few on screen, who plays the role of Eddie, and some reviews call them the breakout star. In the Starz Network drama series Vida, because the grito that we can't do, but they can do so well. Originally from Huntington Park, California, they grew up in various East LA and San Gabriel Valley communities. They wrote and performed at Rio Hondo College and graduated from LMU with a BA in Communication and Fine Arts in Theater, major in 2005. In addition, they have been a struggling actor trying to find the right part that represents them and their community, and luckily, this is it. Please help me welcome Ser. Thank you, you wrote it so well. Espérame, there we go. And luckily, because this show is filled with so many queer Latinx people, we have another star with us today, Michel Prada. Michel first broke on the national scene as the lead of the Emmy-nominated AMC digital series Fear of the Walking Dead: Passage. Today, she's likely known best for her role as Emma in the Starz breakout hit series Vida. Michel is immensely proud to be taking part in ClexaCon family and meeting with us today specifically as part of the show that so positively exemplifies the LGBT community. Please help me welcome Michel Prada. You're not on. Theater voice. Hello, right?
Hello.
Or the protest voice, right?
Yes.
Thank you so. We're here, we're queer, and we're brown. That can't be forgotten.
We're sticking around. I don't know.
So thank you for joining us. I'm so excited. We're so excited. And I'm going to start with collective questions and then ask you each individual questions. Does that work? Yeah. Okay, great. So easy, hopefully. What is your favorite part of playing Eddie and Emma?
Eddie and Emma is an awesome duo. I'm turning you on, Mike. Easy. I think that we have such great chemistry. It's so wonderful to work with Michelle. There's so much that she brings, and so much that I think we have a lot in common, where I think in that people could look at us and assume things about us. But there's so much where we come from, and I think we both bring that to the screen, specifically about Boyle Heights, but a lot of communities are like that, or there's something about the community in our own communities that we see, may not be exactly like that. You may not have an activist that'll say, get the fuck out, but it's other things as well. I'm so blessed to have such a great scene partner when we're working together. She's just so giving, and because of that, we've also gotten to know each other a lot better and deeper with our personal stories, our background, our histories, our herstories, and their stories. But I think that's my favorite part, is getting to play with this one. Even though I'm crying, it's so much easier to get to do my work because she's just so open and so loving and just non-judgmental. And that's what you want in a scene partner, and a castmate. You're gonna be spending so much time with them when you're hangry, when you're on my trailer, but it's come in the trailer. We have a different kind of connection that other shows may not have, or maybe they do, but I just know it's very special. So I'm really grateful for it. So that's my favorite part.
Well, I feel the same. I mean, I think when I came on, especially in those initial episodes, we worked a lot. We did a lot of rehearsals in the pilot, and that scene where Emma's confronting Eddie about the will.
Yes.
Like that was it was really difficult for me at the beginning to really go there, because it's just, I feel like I care so much, and to be able to like kind of spew this type of like kind of venom at somebody, and somebody that's so as sensitive as said it was really hard, and to feel comfortable. And we had this conversation. We were both working with with the same acting coach, Marjorie Ballantyne, and Marjorie kind of helped me really get into a place where it's like, well, you're never as mean to other people as you are to yourself. And the mental dialogue that you make is way more disgusting what you say to yourself than what you say to others. And if we played with this idea of Eddie being a mirror of Emma, then we could kind of create that venue for that. And we had discussed that, and me being like, anything that you're a vessel to kind of me to tell it to myself, and it hasn't really nothing to do with you. It's everything me, and you're just holding that space for me. So as actors, we kind of played with that, and I think it worked really well because it gave me the freedom. You were very open to kind of play that way, and at the end of that scene, we just kind of held each other and cried, because it was just like, it's intense, but it's also important to show that stuff and to show what that's like, because that is a reality. So many times when people are just so confused and just really derogatory towards someone's gender or sexuality, it usually almost always has something to do with something that they haven't really felt comfortable with. And even though we're showing it manifested in a way that is kind of ugly, that's just the way that it is, and for us to kind of understand that. And I appreciate you being so open, even in that scene, to kind of hold that space for Emma as a character, and then for me as me, So
I mean, for that, like, she's coming at, you don't have to say words sometimes, but it's those words, and her eyes are just, oh gosh, that really hurt. But we have to, it's like, oh, what? That's triggering though, right? Because it's like, you know what I mean? As an actor, I have to prepare myself for that as well. Like, it's not me, and also it's not you telling me that. It's like, we really have to be there for each other, and so that's part of like, but we can do, and the self-care that goes into being the afterwards, the after that, and how it could affect, or what things all of a sudden is just breaking me down inside, and I just have to let it out, or it makes me laugh, and some things are just so fucked up, it just makes you laugh, because before you do something else, like, you just have to laugh at it because it's so ridiculous. But that's part of it, and like, I'm telling you, like, if any of you are actors here or artists, self-care obviously is essential. It's a spiritual process to be able, for myself, to be able to be completely present and be Eddie, and not be like Ser comes in there.
Hold on.
No, that's real. And one of the things I love about the show that we don't often see is an intergenerational dialogue, right? Where Eddie is not a senior, but like an elder queer person, yeah. And Emma is a younger person who others may define as queer but doesn't have labels for herself. And so can you speak to the significance of having a critical, ongoing intergenerational dialogue between the younger, labelless person who doesn't need to define their sexuality and Eddie, who's married and it has this intentionally queer Chicanx dyke bar?
It's completely, essentially, like, super important. We have a large audience. The story is like, oh, it's a brown story, or it's LGBT. No, it's a universal story, and our stories aren't just like the others. It's like people just break down those walls and see us for who we really are, then they would be like, that's me, and then maybe we can then have more like what TV does, and the more access people have to those stories, and then the more they'll have empathy for us and for those that may represent. I was like, I don't know anybody who's LGBTQIA, but I know Eddie, you know, I know Emma, I know, you know, and so it's essential. It's so important to always call it, like, I think, you know.
And I think also to see a lot of times parents in the way that it was, and we kind of addressed it a little bit in the show in season 1, and it gets addressed more in season 2, which is May 23rd. We're so excited. Two specific kind of conversations come to mind, and I think it comes from having half of the writers' room be queer. So there's not one way to be queer. There's not one way to be Latinx. There's not one way to be a woman or non-binary or a man or anything. So to be able to have more than one representation in the writers' room, you create these conversations, and those conversations end up on screen. So one of them, I think, with even just the generations, showing a parent what the effects of you not accepting somebody can have. And Vidalia she's like the wind. You don't see her, but she's there, you know, and seeing how she affected Eddie, and seeing how she affected Lynn and Emma and the community and the bar and all of that stuff. And then we get to see a lot more of her effects in season 2. And then we have this really amazing conversation in season 3 or 2. Ooh, wishful thinking.
Life goals.
Season 3.
Where it's, you know, it's a table of it's a wedding, and it's a table of all different types of brown queers, and they kind of go after Emma, and they're like, well, you pass, so you're not really queer, or you don't know what it's like to be like me because I don't pass, or whatever. And having those conversations, or making fun of somebody for not choosing to identify, being like, well, she doesn't identify, so she's not really holding our struggle. And being like, how is it that there's so much otherizations and yet you otherize yourselves?
How much does that happen
like,
in our
you know,
community?
and what that looks like. And I don't think we've gotten to see those conversations very often, because I know that I grew up in Miami. Hi, Aaliyah. Was it represent? And my school was mostly black and brown, and it was Miami. So we had a trans person run for homecoming court my senior year, and it wasn't like, it was a thing of interest, but it wasn't like, whoa, crazy. Like, you know, it was just kind of, it was Miami. So what that, you know, it's like we've all grown up in different situations. So I didn't even grow up with the language. It wasn't until I joined the show that I started understanding, like, very specific, like, this is that, this is this is the label for this is, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't know. Everybody just kind of was what they were, and that was that. And it was Miami, baby.
Yeah, I mean, and it's important to show. It's important to show that so people can identify and be like, oh, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. You know, there was something else I was gonna say. Maybe I'll remember it right now, but yeah.
That I had my set of questions, but I checked in with the audience to see if there was something else I should ask. And one of the things that a Latina asked is, like, when we talk about labels or not labels, most of the time we're having that conversation in English. Mm. What could that conversation look like in Spanish, right?
What conversation?
The question of the conversation around labels, around gender and sexuality.
Oh, yeah, right.
Like, when I was living in Portland, Oregon, with the undocumented women I was working with in my Catholic church, I just said gay because I didn't know how to say queer, right? And so, how do you think we should approach it when you're talking to Spanish-dominant folks? What terms do you use, or how do you explain not using terms?
Yo, let's create our own language. Why do we have to always go with scholars say and like what we learn in school? Like, we're culture makers. You're a community asset, you know? Like, we can just make it up and be like, this is that. Like, sometimes we say, you know, instead of hey girl, say hey squirrel, what? We just have fun with it because it's also making fun of the whole thing as well as not like being triggered like, you're calling me girl. Like, that's how I say my girl. I'm sorry, I just went there. So apologies if that was like triggering for anybody, but I was, you know, it makes me feel that way. And I think it's also important to do it because, like, the intergenerationally, how often does the language change? Every week, every day? So people even like the Eddie's, generation, friends of mine that in Boyle Heights, and like they're like, the whole thing, the LGBTQ and the rest of the alphabet, and these kinds of things come up. That's also that jab at the other identities. But I think it's important to continue the conversation. And in Spanish, I love that we don't translate. We don't translate to any language. Like, it's just Spanish, and it's just, that's how we talk. If you go to, or that's how Boyle Heights is, and you go into.
And is it possible, eventually we're all moving to a place where love has no language, and you can just fall in love with who you want to, and you don't have to have this like traumatic experience when you're like, by the way, I'm in love, and it's with this person. Because it's like, and maybe when people look at anybody that isn't heteronormative, they don't think about their sexuality, because that's weird. When you really think about it, like when your parents are like upset, you're just like, it's because you're thinking about me having sex. Like, that's weird. And like, that's what's freaking you out. So like, why don't you check yourself and stop that?
Because that's exactly, and also like saying like always, all the time, this is my sexuality. This is my, dang, is it any of your business? Can I have a privacy? Dang, like, why are you so obsessed with everything that goes on? You know what I mean? Like, so it's really important, but language is super important. I think a lot of people are like, what? It's not translated? And it's refreshing for so many people, like, what a relief to hear our language without it having to be butchered, or like, well, some, everyone has their own opinion, but like, let it flow without having translation. It's so beautiful. It's like freeing and liberating. And I would do that with my solo show, and I would have certain audience members were like mad that I wouldn't translate the language, and it wasn't like the whole entire play was in Spanish, but there was moments where I'd go into poetry and I wouldn't translate on purpose. So I want them to like feel it and go with me, so they break through those barriers of fucking language. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're this, you're that, you're this, and that means that you're brown, that means you're a criminal, that means, and they go through all that stuff, you know what I mean? And that's part of what the show is like, there is no gang members, even though it's real, but on purpose. There is no drug, any sort of storyline regarding stereotypes or tropes necessarily within the brown community. So it's so important and so refreshing for a lot of people. So
it's so not important. Like, we are some of those things, like those things do exist in the neighborhood, but also most of the time it's people just trying to put food on the table, and they fall in love, and they have joys and defeats and happiness and stresses just like everybody else, and we want to show that in a loving way.
Yeah, we have this administration, and we also have the border crisis, and we have anti-immigrant and anti-refugee, like anti-human, anti-freaking human, and this show humanizes so many people. And it may not be the first time for some people, but a lot of times it is, especially since we're international now. We're like in every country aside Latin America. We're gonna get there.
We'll get there.
Getting there.
I don't know, Cuba. Yeah.
Apparently someone in Cuba.
Cuba. Oh,
Someone in Cuba saw us on the...
Oh.
We're dubbed in Spanish. So
Trinidad and maybe Trinidad.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I don't know.
We don't know if they're like, if that's like, the way that you download that sometimes.
We're
you know what I'm
there,
saying?
though.
I don't want to say the I word.
Yeah.
It's the way we do sometimes when we ain't got the funds. It's all good.
The way we steal that shit.
I'm the LimeWire generation. I get it. And as we talk about queer representation in the Americas, I think about this concept of regresando a la gente, of returning home. And so this question is for Michel, right? Like, most of my queer life, I was never home. And I'm from Chicago. That's a whole other conversation. Woo, woo, no, sorry. And so it took gente time by the time I finally came back to acostumbrarse that I was queer. And you can share spoilers, you cannot. Will we get more of what it means for Emma to come home and, in essence, be more vulnerable about why she left in this next season?
Yeah, I mean, vulnerability is definitely not one of her strengths. So she's going to try and try badly. Because, the second season picks up, I think, about a week and a half after season 1 ends. So you don't miss very much. And one of my favorite things that you see is her relationship with Cruz. I'm trying, no spoilers, but it's, when you have a vision of somebody and you've put them on a pedestal for so long, they will never live up to who you think they are. Even if they are a wonderful person, and it's been years since, I think it's been about 10 years, no, maybe about 12, since Emma and Cruz, were kids together. And it's going to be really interesting to see the way that relationship unfolds, because it's a very real thing, and it gets real. And the season 1, we see a lot of like the little butterflies and the little fun things, but we really see the reality of someone living up to or not living up to what you think that they are. And we see Emma have essentially her first friend in one of the new characters, Roberta Colindres, from I Love Dick fame and The Deuce, and she's amazing and was really wonderful to work with. And Nico, she ends up being kind of Emma's first friend. So we see that, and we see also it's hard enough to go into business with family, let alone your sister, who is so different than you. And also just seeing what that means for Emma, and what that, like how she fits in the community, how the community accepts or doesn't accept her, how she's staking her claim back because she's been running for so long. So there's a lot of really, really great layers. I mean, our writer's room does a really amazing job. And then seeing, we end season 1 with this immense guilt of the reality of the neighborhood, and realizing that the bar actually is a lot more important than she realizes, because she's never really accepted herself into this like labeled queer community. She just was like, I just am who I am, and that's it, I'm an island. And then realizing that in the neighborhood, like she can't run from things, she can't like section everything off, and she feels responsible for what happened to Eddie. And in some ways she is, and it was important for that to happen for them, but she sees almost like this physical manifestation of what she's been doing to Eddie emotionally, and also to herself emotionally. There's like her watching Eddie in this hospital room, it's like, wow, like that's what I've been doing. I've been pushing this away. I've been, bullying this around, and this is where it ends up. So that's all how we start season 2. There's a lot of stuff in there.
And so thinking about that context and that return home, one of the things we don't get to see is Vida and Eddie planning to re-embrace Emma. And I feel a little FOMO about that they planned that, and I'm just getting sentimental talking about it. So this question's for Sed. So you have to explain everything that you and not you, but Eddie and Vida planned in regards to curando esa herida con Emma. What light can you shed on how Eddie approaches some of that in season 2, and what it takes for that to happen, right? Because Eddie loves Vida, and by extension loves Vida's daughters. But then hay este secreto that we don't have time to uncover because Vida's passed. So what can you tell us?
Well, as you know, season 1 ends the way it ends, and Eddie is broken completely, bones, a punctured spleen, 3 broken ribs, a displaced hip. And so on top of what happened in season 1, looking forward to how are we gonna make this work? Are we gonna make this work? Is this gonna happen? You have Eddie with no source of income, not being able to work. Someone that has been able to take care of so many things, and the tenants, and the viejitas, and the cats or whatever. It's so hard to be that vulnerable. So Eddie, you're gonna see Eddie just being so much more vulnerable, even in a different way, because now it's a different setting. Now it's like we get to enter season 2 as a new world of the 2 sisters saying, yes, we're gonna do this. What does that mean for Eddie? Are they being honest? I don't know. you know, Eddie does have a longing to have that bond, that relationship, stepdaughters, you know, stepmother relationship. But also what happens when any person is put under situations and circumstances that they're fending for, like trying to survival skills, fight or flight. You usually see out of character decisions and behavior. And it's like you add more to the plate than all these plates that Eddie's like juggling, be like, oh, we can do this. It's like it's trying to stay positive, leading with her heart, and how much can she stand? Like what else is gonna happen? So you do see like Eddie. It is a beautiful thing to be able to play like as an actor for sure, because the writers did give me something, a beautiful thing for, you know, to go through emotionally and physically. So on top of everything, I have all of that, and it takes it's basically, you know, every episode is a day, so, and it's 10 episodes, so it's like beginning of the healing process. But then you keep adding some stuff in there, which the writers and Tanya, they all do a great job of diving deep. So we just got an appetizer. This is like more like the main course, and you get to sit with it, and you get to like really just why I'm just saying that.
And you also, like, I think a really interesting thing is now Eddie is dependent on Emma, because Emma it's her money that's in the game. So it's like, what does that look like now? That, you know, that's
Emma's money. You know?
Yeah, no, totally. And we have a
guilt,
pretty big reveal in the first episode
Yeah.
that I think kind of changes the dynamic a little bit. And it's, you know, I don't know. It's interesting. There's a lot of layers into it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the important, or two of the important layers are the queer Chicano space that building is. You know, I think most folks younger than us don't really know what the norm of a dyke bar is, but this is not just a dyke bar, it's a Chicanx, Latinx dyke bar. So what are your thoughts on Vida's role in being able to tell that story of not just the effects of displacement on the Chicanx community, but on the effects of having a safe queer space like that dyke bar? Like, it's telling both stories at once. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think that's one of the most important things that the show does for everyone, and yet a very specific community at once.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's so close to home. It's like, it's just reality, you know, just because also the short story that it's based on, Vida, es por Vida, by Richard Villegas, and he included Red's Bar, which it was a trans woman owned lesbian heavy, bar in Boyle Heights that was very divey, and, you know, had mirrors to make it look bigger, you know, like, and it was a beautiful thing to have that, and it's sort of like, I feel like, you know, as I get older, like that's part of preservation of history, but it's a reality, because it recently, like I mentioned in the other panel too, like having the conversations of bars closing, and specifically, you know, brown, Chicanx, you know, Chicana, like not many people know we exist. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
it also shows the importance of when something like that exists, to support it. And to just show up and not just be like, oh, I'm glad that exists.
Oh, that's a brown, that's a Chicana, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, just show up, spend your money, because that's how we vote, and that's how, you know, take your time and really do that. I mean, we saw what happened to One Day at a Time. Hopefully they'll find a new home, you know, and we're not guaranteed a season 3. And I mean, I'm gonna be real, like, we're seeing a little bit more of what's on the corporate side of things, and things are changing, but they haven't changed. We're still fighting. Our show is 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Are one of the highest critically rated shows on TV right now, and we're still, like, season 3 is not like a wrap. It should be, you know, we won a GLAAD award, like it should just be like, yes, of course, this is gonna get a third season. But it's still like kind of having to prove ourselves and having to show that the people are watching. And I think that kind of going back to what you were saying about the bar, it's all tied in. I mean, we really have to reinforce our space over and over again, because you think you see it and you're like, oh, that's a network, it's fine, but it's still a battle.
A lot of my friends are like, oh, you're fine. No, you're a storyteller. You're an artist. Like, it is you. Like, it's not, oh, that's not exactly me. That's not, I don't like the accent. I don't care. Like, I do care. I do. But I'm saying, like, right now, it's like, it's, for me, I see it like voting, like I was saying too, like, it's our identity. It's like, it is mobilizing. It's organizing. It's our lives are at stake. It's not just an identity or just a TV show.
Yeah,
you know,
and
we're
now
proving to the white men in power.
Yeah.
The white men are in power. We have white men in power.
In case you guys missed it, the white men are in power. It's zero.
You know.
But no, and I think in the age of social media, it's like, that's why you all are so important. Like, you are a part of our show. You're a part of the conversation. You're part of the movement that's happening, because we shouldn't be the only show. We shouldn't be the outlier. Like, this should be something that's normal. And you guys tweeting and telling everybody about it and everything, it creates a grassroots movement that, you know, they can't ignore us if we won't shut up.
Right. And and as a queer Latina, I wish I was a teenager right now, because we've got One Day at a Time, we've got Vida, we've got JR and Jane the Virgin, we've got Stephanie Beatrice on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Please, this list is so hard. And I love that it's hard. We've got Pose, obviously, and then we've got Juliantina, but we've got Claus, right?
Yeah. But she got the character.
Yeah.
That's right.
The character. And then who am I missing? And then we've got Sarah Ramirez and Madam Secretary. So in essence, hay siete.
There's almost 500 shows on TV. And
right?
there's
7.
And yeah, you're
queer
counting
Latinx
with
folks.
fingers.
And don't be saying, I hear this from actors and from people in the industry all the time. It's just that white people, we just don't have jobs anymore because the brown people are taking the jobs. We're like a much bigger percentage, like, you know, but reflecting onto the projects on screen and the big screen and the smaller screen of TV, it's not reflected. So it's feeling like it for some people, but in the numbers, it's not. And I am like, like, how do I answer like this? You know, actors like, oh, I just can't find a job. I'm like, you're hired right now. We're working together. Like, damn, I haven't had an audition like in forever. And you know what I mean? So it's like, it's also it's privilege, like, and I don't know. It's
white men in power. Is that what you're
it's
gonna
a
say?
white man that is in power.
But what does it?
Nosotros, we here.
But what does it? But you're on one of the 7 shows. Yeah. You're the queer Chica Next, Latinx. What does that feel like to be part of this historical moment? Because it's historic. When has there ever been 7 queer Latinx folks across TV shows?
Yeah.
I don't know how I got so lucky. I got brought on about a week and a half before I started shooting. I was a recast, and I had originally actually auditioned for the role of Cruz, and I tested for it, and I was like, I'm gonna get this role, and then I didn't get the role, and then I want to say, yeah, like about, my manager's in here, I don't know, about a week later, I got a call saying that the showrunner wanted to meet with me, and then I got to, the next day we were rehearsing. And I don't know how I got so lucky. Oh yeah, we went and had tacos. It was good. But yeah, because I remember wanting to be on a show like this, and I remember when Vida was announced, just like on deadline, they were just like, this show is announced, and I was like, oh man, this is so amazing. I can't wait to watch the show. I hope I get to work on a show like that one day. I never expected to get to be one of the leads. I actually originally did go in for Lynn, then Cruz, and then I got given Emma in this beautiful thing, because I was so intimidated too, because I was like, this character is so different than me. Like, I'm so much more like Lynn in my life. Like, you guys won't even know.
She's not like Emma at all.
Like I spent
Thank
like
God.
2 years like following somebody around on a tour bus, like living like a hippie. Like I was like, and then eventually kind of being like, I want a career. And
I want my own tour bus.
I want my own tour bus. I want to go to ClexaCon. And yeah, so I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I can tell you though that if you just keep going, whatever it is that you want to do, and get good at it, like really work at your craft. I mean, you were doing plays and writing your own stuff. I was in classes. I was writing a lot of my own stuff. Wrote something actually really similar to Vida because it was something that I really wanted, and the character I wrote for myself was similar, gender fluid. Like, there was this really great thing in Highland Park, which is not Boyle Heights, but right next door to it. And just, I don't know, like, I don't know. Anyways, I don't know where the question was, but that's where we ended up.
Well, I was doing my play, and just to give you an example of what Michel was just saying, like it world premiered in 2013, at the end of 2013, and I was working on it about 8 years at that time. At the 5th year, I was like, I'm ready for my world premiere. I'm ready for the whole world to see. I want, all the theater, everybody, like, to come and see it. I'm ready for the next level. This is gonna take me to the next level. And it didn't happen for me, and I was just like bummed, and I was like, going through it. And then it happened in 2012, 2013, sorry. And at 2012, I dreamed, like, I was awake though. I was envisioning like my play with characters that were instruments and music. I didn't know how it was gonna happen, but then the musicians came, the music, the money came. It was easy after that. It was so hard to get there, but once it was meant for me, it was like boom, 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 boom. Okay, just don't get sick, Just keep going. And then that show got me into East Los High. I had no agent, no manager. It was me. I negotiated my contract. Don't ever do that. But I had to. Sometimes, like when they're like, oh, we want that person, and then they still audition people, and then they found, like, okay, me, and then I was like 50 pounds lighter, and I could look younger. And when I gained weight, I thought I wasn't gonna find a job because it's really, really, really hard for thick actors and actresses. I feel I can only speak for myself, but if you love Vida, but you're too thick for that. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. So it's like, then it's like the actor goes on, I can only play Eddie then, or So I just kept working hard. I was starving, I was driving Uber, gaining weight, having, health issues and that, because I didn't really have time to go to the doctor. And I was like, I just keep going. It was like hamstering the wheel, just keep going. And then I didn't know all these other shows on TV because I was doing theater, and then I got into TV, but then I was still like surviving and driving and trying to just watch the shows that I was getting auditions for. I try to watch it on YouTube, any clips, anything to get a sense of what I needed to do. But when I was doing a play, and I was literally crying because why did I do this play? Like they paid for like one of the fourth show in Los Angeles to be like where you pay for minimum wage for the actors, and I was like, this is the worst decision. I want to focus on the play, and then I gotta drive and make money. I was like, I can't. And then I did the play, and then Tanya came to see it, and she came to see it because her best friend was playing my best friend in the show, and we were both Latinx, the only Latinx, in the cast. There was 4, 2 white women, a gender nonconforming black character, and then us 2, and I was masculine center in it too, and I was told that there was no role for me in Vida from the pilot. Like there's some people that read the pilot, I read it, I just don't see, you're too young, and I was like, fuck, I'm either too young, too this, too that. So I was like, whatever. Anyway, I'm so happy for Tanya, and in the activist circles, they were, once it came out like that she was gonna write about it, I didn't know what the characters were. There was a lot of shit talking in the inner circles or the like closed groups. And I was like, oh shit, and I'm one of the only actors in the community. So I was like, okay, what's this? Tanya's gonna lead a lot of support. And then finally, when she saw me in the play, she was like, "You're Eddie." And I was like, "Oh, like she's such a sweetheart because she's so loving and so giving. She wanted me to be like another small little role down the line. You're so sweet. Thank you so much." And I didn't even know because I'm like, Tanya Saracho's hugging me right now. Like I had a huge crush on her at the time. I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God." Ah. And I told her many times. So, no, but we're just like this tight family, so it's a beautiful thing. And then I came into audition in person, and when I read the script though, it was like without me thinking or wanting or like on intentional, like I want this show to be like a combination of everything that I'm working on. Like there's so much in it that's like activism and meets the industry. It's and so my life came to it came together like that, where before it was like I can't talk about that. I can't talk. Now it's like we could talk about that. People are talking about that. Oh, let's talk about people of color, marginalized communities. Let's talk about that shit. And then it was really like something that was appreciative from Tanya and the producers, that I can bring that, like that they can ask me, like, what do you think about this? That's what also as an actor you want, a collaborative, not like, oh, bring the sack of meat in, Yeah. Or, like that person, bring them in and like
yourself.
Move there, move that.
A sack of meat.
They say that on Game of Thrones or something. Anyway, I don't really watch it, but.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have time to open it up to the floor, because we could talk all day, because I have so many feelings. I know Jen in front had a question.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That'd be great. Okay, so for fans who love season 1 already, what can we do to help and grow this platform? With season 2 dropping shortly, what is the most impactful way we can make these higher ups, people at Starz, know how much we are excited for this content? Is it subscribing to Starz?
Yes.
Is it growing the Twitter? What can we do specifically to show Starz that we are here and we are ready and excited to receive it?
Thank you for that question. We've talked about this so much, because we know we have to do a lot more than be actors. We have to really push it. And it definitely does come to subscribing. I mean, but there's different ways to mobilize your friends and to do it, or to think about, it's not a cable price, it's $8 a month. Like once
and it's bingeable this season,
and
so you only got to
really
pay it once.
One
it's like
time.
cheaper than a movie ticket.
Yeah.
No, but and like doing it on the day, let's say,
Yes,
like,
on the day.
whatever, because I know even I have family being like, oye, mírame, el password para Starz. And I'm like, no, it's $8. I will give you the $8.
But
I am paying the $8.
Yeah, I'll pay the $8.
Like,
Yeah, just don't drink those cafecitos que te cuestan como $20 al mes, and you can also afford Starz.
But yeah,
and then
just
some.
encouraging that and making sure that, because I think that's an awareness, right? You don't realize that matters, but it's like, I mean, I do some shady stuff. Like when there's like stuff on, whatever, Wonder Woman or Black Panther or anything, I'll go see every movie I go see. I buy a ticket for the Black Panther, and then I'll go to the other movie if I've already seen it. But I'm like just making sure. Like, being like, yeah, and then I'll like go to the Black Panther screening closer to the time of the other movie I'm gonna see. But
or if you do have, like maybe you have friends who can't afford it, maybe you can buy a subscription for them, or that's one thing that I know like some of us thought about.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think it's like we are all in this together, and we see it and we appreciate it. I mean, I am not an active Twitter person, but I'm like always kind of looking online and just like really aware of it. Like we really do see it. And I think more than other actors normally on show, we were like very involved in stuff. I mean, Melissa and I went and had a meeting with Starz the other day of being like, we don't feel like you're marketing our show the way that it needs to be. Like, why are there not billboards in the hood? Like, why, or is it only like in Echo Park, which is like, in your mind, and I don't know if they're used to actors coming in there and being like, no, this isn't.
I went in there too.
Yeah, you did too. And I know Chelsea is very vocal. I mean, we all care so much about this show. This is not just another job for us. We really feel that we get to be part of a movement, and I normally am really weird about self-promotion, and I don't feel that anymore because I'm like, this isn't about me. This is about something bigger than us. Yeah. And when we attach ourselves to that, we understand that that's really beautiful, because that's the way that we've survived for so long. I mean, it's family, and you guys are our family, and we see you guys. Like, we really, really do and appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll just add one thing. Yes, just treat it like a voting campaign. Like, however you can kind of flip it. If it's like TV, sometimes it's hard to like think about it, but like if you think about voting, every vote matters, every view matters. Like, you may have a group view, but if each person is watching it at the same time, that matters. Voting, viewing, I mean, it's very important.
Yeah, there's an app, and it's $8 for the month, and then you can just cancel it. It's what all the people on Power do as well.
Yeah, 7-day free trial, cancel.
I hope this is being
on
recorded.
7th, on the 6th. Watch Power, all the other ones.
Thank you. Yes, right here.
And sorry, I'm very shy. But I just wanted to say thank you both so much for being part of such an important show for me. As a queer Caribbean American, there is no representation for me on TV, especially American TV. So oftentimes, you know, most of the representation is white queer women. So oftentimes I'm watching international shows. So when I found Vida, I was moved to tears, because it was the closest thing to an accurate representation of me on TV. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Whoa. And I just want to let you know, Tanya Saracho is running an all Afro Latinx show called Brujas, based in Chicago.
All Afro Latinx writers room. Awesome. Yeah, all Afro Latinx writers room that takes place in Chicago.
Thank you. I'll be on the lookout. My question is, how do you deal with that pressure? Because I know I'm not the only fan that relates to Vida like that. So how do you deal with that pressure or responsibility of being part of such a very enormous and important show?
You know, I look at it as an honor, because it all happened really quickly. Like, I went from, you know, like living very hand to mouth, like whatever I booked, you know, I would like let it stretch out as long as I could, like, you know, the money, and to doing the show, and then somehow being asked to speak at rallies like to keep families together. And, you know, I was terrified. I was like, wait, I can't speak to 50,000 people, but realizing, well, if I don't do it, then who's going to do it? You know, and really looking at it as like, well, I guess this is my honor to get to do this, and I can be terrified, but if I can't tell other people to be strong if I can't do it for myself. And it's a learning process for me, because it's not something that comes natural, but I've realized that because we care so much about this content and about the movement and just so much about, you know, and everybody, I wish you guys could see what goes on behind the camera. There's all these women and women of color and just all sorts of Latinx people, and it's so beautiful. And I think that inspires us, because we're also a voice for that. We get to just literally be the cherry on top of this cake that has been, there's so many moving parts. So it becomes not even about us anymore. So it's just one step at a time, you know, and moving out of your comfort zone. But,
I think it's also like knowing that it's bigger than us, like you're saying, and it's also saying like who for all the nudity that's out there, for all the stuff that goes on to women and people of color and trans, non-binary, you know, folks, like the fact that as actors you can, and with the producer, with Tanya, like all the team say, it does matter your comfort level. That does not happen. You know, my agent said for every 100 writers, nudity writers, he has to negotiate and write for TV, 0 for men, all women. And then now they added me to that for season 1, non-binary. But, you know, that's a huge thing that we got to keep on pushing to, respect for the actor, respect for us as human beings. So I see it like that. I go to therapy. It was really hard for me to find a LGBTQIA open, non-discriminating person. So I finally found this like second week, and I need to, because it's a lot. It's all perception too. Like you see it, we're doing our thing, and you see social media, but there's stuff that you don't see. That sometimes it's like some people can post something, but it's like, you know, sometimes some people are not supportive, you know, and it's like, but we were talking about representation on TV, and it turns out they're jealous, you know, they want to be on TV, and it's that the thing is, it comes from a need to be seen. So I try to remember that it's a need to be seen. Like they're like, I haven't watched it. Like certain things people have done, like, and I have set boundaries for myself. Like I can't do this, or I'll only stay for this kind of thing. Like if I know that I have to have my hand, like a person to help me. These kinds of things. So I think it's quite a bit, because it feels like, whoa, this is definitely like that one of the show, like one show, or like one of 7, you know. But it's sometimes it's like all these weird things happening. Things move so fast that I had to go from living with my neighbor throwing me a cable to plug in for lights, you know, while I was auditioning for Vida. I gave it all I had, and like that to go, okay, now you got to be on red carpets and look like fly as fuck.
Come on, it's not that hard.
And I was like, that's hard, because when I was poor, it was like, that's how I related to Eddie too. Like they don't have time to think about that. At least that's what I know. A lot of poor folks that are like totally fashionable, and they inspire me. I'm just saying, like I didn't have time for that. Yeah. So now
we're here.
Yeah,
we're doing
layers
it. We're
and
taking
layers
it one
and
step
layers.
at a time.
Woo!
Thank you. I know a lot of content creators here can relate, and I know one half of Latinx Geeks has a question here.
Thank you.
Chingona.
So one thing that I have loved about Vida so far is just how many queer experiences you've been able to include in the show, and doing it honestly, and even some very difficult things. I know for myself, the second that Eddie walked into that bathroom, I knew. Yeah. It was like this instant fear, and I knew what was gonna happen. And because that's a real thing for a lot of people. They're, unfortunately, because of all those identities, you know, being masculine presenting, lesbian, being brown, and being in this space that is not for you, unfortunately, there is violence. And I want to know, how was that process, having to film that and getting to that headspace, and just the self-care that must have gone into it, because I know that must have been very difficult for everyone in the cast.
Thank you. I mean, I'm glad we had 1 through 5 because, you know, 3 was really the most, that was really, you know, the most difficult for an actor, for me as an actor, to act with going underwater and doing that too. But knowing that, oh shit, I had to really just really do a lot of visualizations, you know, for protection. I talked to the actor, Cruz, such a beautiful person. He's got a great story. I hope he shares with the world. He played a co-star who beat up Eddie, but like us talking was really important, like how we did when the scene we were doing, like that was essential, you know, and the fact that they cast someone that has that quality is thank you, because you know, there's so much more work I'd have to do when you have a jerk, you know, in real life, and then they're a jerk. So, yeah, it's just like I would go to the Virgen, you know, I'd go to the Virgen Guadalupe, and she was my Virgen, you know, like for Eddie and myself, I just found this beautiful like connection to what some people call La Virgen Guadalupe, or also Tonantzin, and it was, I felt like that I was taken care of by my ancestors, like in the room, you know, I just called for them to be there. It's like I said, it's very spiritual, because you just need to be able to like know the difference between, you know, in the moment, you can get triggered as fuck, you know. The beautiful thing too is that Tanya asks, you know, what's, you know, she's always making sure that I'm okay, we're all okay. But yeah, I think just remembering all the actual transgender, non-binary folks that have either experienced the violence that we don't know of, that they do not get to report, that, you know, and myself that I have, you know, a abuser living next to me. So that was really real for me. That was hard, but at the same time, it was like somewhat of a thing of going down my experience that like it's not hard to access, you know, but also going, it's not real life. And is what's happening, because it's like everything's happening, like a lot of stuff going on in Vida happening in my life. I hope I don't get my ass beat, you know? Because like, be careful what you put out there, Nipsey Hussle, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot, I know it's complicated, but I'm just saying that like, we think about like Tupac like said that stuff too, you know what I mean? Like, it's like what we say we'll put out there. And so I'm very cautious of that, you know, so.
I thought also one of the most powerful things about that scene is that it was really shot from the point of view of Eddie. And it made it really powerful, and it put you in that position, whether you've personally experienced that or not, but you're really seeing what having that thrown at you is like. And I really loved that was a decision that they made in the shot list, because it's, you know, so often it can be the other way, and it's like, oh, let's see what this looks like, and it's hard to watch, but when you really kind of have it coming at you as a viewer, it really puts you in their shoes.
And lucky that was directed by Rostroche from the L Word. Like, thank God. And the crew, oh my God, the crew, even though they're like, usually you don't, like, actors don't talk to, like, it's very like, you have to like stay focused, and it's not anything mean, like, it's just really like, oh my God, I just want to get through, it's like tightrope walking, like, I just want to, but we developed such a beautiful chemistry with everybody, the PAs, everybody, that after such a intense scene, I'm just like cracking jokes with them, cracking up, because I have to for survival. I'm crying and cut, and I'm just, and then I go back.
You know what the crazy thing too is that all of like the really just shitty characters are played by the nicest people. Like the guy who plays Nelson is like one of our best friends. You guys have no idea. Like he's constantly like texting us being like, you're so like amazing. Yeah. We're so proud of you. Like, da, da, da. And Ramses, who plays Tlaloc, is like just such a just gem. And you know, just all the worse the character is, probably the nicer they are in real life.
Yeah. I'm a jerk. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I think we have room for maybe 1 to 2 questions. This person here, and if we have time, we'll get to Frankie.
Hello. First, I would like to say watch Good Trouble. It has a bisexual Latinx man and a trans woman, a Latinx trans woman.
Good Trouble. Good Trouble.
That was on my list. That wasn't on my list.
Number 8.
So just want to say that. First, this is for Ser. I just want to thank you for your existence. Thank you for being who you are and just acting and being a non-binary person. Being a non-binary person, because you don't see that representation really ever. You see trans binary representation, you see cis representation obviously everywhere, but you never see non-binary rep, and that's extremely, extremely, extremely important to see. So I just wanted to say that you and your existence and being an actor and the role of Eddie is such an important role. So I just wanted to put that.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm gonna remember that. Like whenever in those bad days, I'm gonna rewind to the video. Thank you.
And then we'll have one last question.
Buenas tardes. Thank you for
Frankie!
being here. I love y'all so much. Thank you so much, for your existence, for the show. It's beautiful. So I have a lot of friends that are trans men that live in like Boyle Heights, Echo Park, Santana, just all over LA. And I feel like sometimes, even though they are usually very binary, very cis-passing trans men, and that can kind of get mixed up in just to the, I guess, everyday crowd, right? However, what I find important about that, I'll get to the question. I'm just saying this because, you know, they're barbers, waiters, doing things like real hood stuff, but have real lives too. Like how Vida portrays that, real loving, even if they gotta do what they gotta do sometimes. And but they're like right there with their abuela. They're making sure that everybody has food to eat or paying the bills and all this stuff. And so I was just wondering, I mean, I love that there's a more non-binary person kind of, you know, in the show. Will we be able to see a more trans folks in the upcoming seasons. I'm gonna put the S because I'm putting out to the universe that there will be more. Is that something we could hope to see maybe?
I hope so. We do have Ray
What's Ray's last name?
Fucala, who's
yeah.
a trans man. In season 1, he sings his Manuel X, who plays Manuel X. They're
Amor
trans.
Eterno, is
Yeah.
it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The ego by they and he. And I've known them from activist circles, so it was a beautiful thing for me. Tanya was like, who do you know that can sing that's more trans, that's more non-binary, who's reflective of you and your crew? And like, I was all, Ray. And then, Ray was able to join us, but we also had Magali, who identifies as lesbian, but she's very masculine presenting. So I think it's also a beautiful thing to show folks in their process and their process. Sometimes I feel like folks think that being trans is an end result of being passing and being in the binary. So, and we have a trans woman also as one of Cruz's friends in season 1 with Marcos and everything when when in the bar.
Yeah, and that's great that you couldn't tell, I guess, Like that's part of it. It wasn't like a fetishized thing. It was like, oh, let's talk about this person. They're just there and they exist in the world. So that makes me happy.
And then when we ran into that actress at the Jill Soloway.